Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Always. What are we exploring today?
Today, we're cracking open a chapter in Genesis that's just packed with symbolism.
Oh, I like where this is going. Which one?
Genesis 35, using MCS Genesis chapter 35 as our guide. And let me tell you, this source doesn't hold back.
Oh, how so?
Well, it claims this chapter reveals how God wanted Israel to bring life to the entire world.
Wow, that's a pretty bold statement, right?
Absolutely. And it sets a pretty high bar for Jacob and his descendants, don't you think?
Definitely. Talk about a challenge. So how does it all begin?
Well, the chapter kicks off with God instructing Jacob to go back to Bethel.
Bethel, right. That's where he had that dream about the staircase to heaven, isn't it?
Exactly. It's a place loaded with spiritual significance. But here's where it gets interesting. God doesn't just say go. He gives Jacob specific instructions first.
Like what?
Like, get rid of all foreign gods, purify yourselves, even put on fresh clothes.
Almost like a spiritual makeover, wouldn't you say?
Totally. It's not enough to just show up. There's this emphasis on inner transformation that's reflected outwardly.
And this theme of change, internal and external, that's going to be big throughout the chapter, right?
You got it. So Jacob's got his marching orders. He's prepping for this massive change. And bam, his name is changed to Israel.
Okay, so why is that such a huge deal? People change their names all the time.
True, but this is no ordinary name change.
How so?
Well, the text really emphasizes the weight of this moment. Israel isn't just a new name for Jacob. It's the name that a whole nation will carry, a people chosen by God for a divine purpose.
I see. It ties back to those earlier promises to Abraham and Isaac, to be fruitful and multiply.
Exactly. This name change echoes those promises. It's signifying a legacy that goes way beyond just Jacob.
So it's connecting him to something much, much bigger. His ancestors, his descendants, a whole nation.
Right. But, and this is where things get a little heartbreaking, just as things seem to be looking up, tragedy strikes.
What happened?
As Jacob's family is on their way to Bethel, Rachel dies during childbirth.
Oh, no.
And the source doesn't shy away from the raw emotion of this moment. It even quotes Rachel's final words.
Really? What does she say?
She names her son Benoni, meaning son of my sorrow.
Oh, that's just heartbreaking.
It really is. It speaks volumes about the depth of her pain.
Yeah.
But then Jacob gives him a different name, right? Benjamin, meaning son of my right hand.
That's interesting. Why the change?
It's like even in the face of unimaginable grief, Jacob is clinging to hope.
Yeah, I see that. Acknowledging her sorrow with one name, but choosing another that speaks of strength, resilience, a future full of possibility.
It's a very human response, don't you think?
Absolutely. To hold both grief and hope at the same time, it's something we all experience.
Exactly. And it makes you think even in those dark moments, there can be glimmers of hope. Speaking of lasting impacts, the source then talks about a monument. Jacob sets one up for Rachel,
Marking the spot where she died.
and it says it's still standing today.
Whether taken literally or symbolically, it speaks to the power of remembrance, doesn't it?
For sure. It's like these physical markers help us grapple with loss, to understand the past and find a way to move forward. It's a lot to unpack from just one death in the chapter.
It is, and it really speaks to just how multifaceted this text is. But this is only the beginning of Jacob's journey in this chapter. His story, a lot like life itself, is full of twists and turns. And often those twists and turns lead us back to places we thought we left behind.
You're right. There's so much more to uncover here. It's amazing how each verse seems to hold a new revelation.
It really does.
And speaking of going back to important places, the chapter then talks about Jacob going to Hebron,
Hebron.
where Abraham and Isaac are buried.
Right.
It's like a family reunion with the patriarchs.
It really is. And it's more than just about the location, isn't it?
What do you mean?
Well, it's about Jacob stepping back into his lineage, into the weight of those promises made to his grandfather.
Oh, you mean about his descendants becoming a great nation?
Exactly. And now here's Jacob, new name, 12 sons, back at the very place where his ancestors are buried. It's a powerful image.
It really is. Like he's picking up the torch, carrying forward this huge legacy.
That's a great way to put it.
But we can't forget about Esau in all of this.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, there's been so much tension between those two.
So much rivalry.
What happens when they're brought back together in Hebron?
Well, that's where our source today highlights something that's easy to overlook. It points out that both Jacob and Esau come together to bury their father.
Oh, wow. I never really thought about it like that.
Think about it. Two brothers, once locked in this bitter conflict, now standing side by side, united.
That's a huge change.
Yeah.
But is it really reconciliation? Or just, fulfilling a duty?
Well, the source suggests it's something deeper, actually. That it might foreshadow a greater unity that God desires, not just within this family.
For everyone.
Exactly. Remember that overarching theme of the chapter? Israel bringing life to the entire world.
Right.
It makes you wonder if this small act, burying their father together, hints at a future where old wounds are healed and people can come together.
It's almost like a microcosm of the human experience, right? We have our differences, our conflicts, but ultimately there's this longing for connection.
Isn't there?
And this chapter seems to be saying that unity, that reconciliation, it's not just some idealistic dream.
It's vital.
Yeah, it's a vital part of fulfilling our purpose.
Powerful stuff.
It really is. It's a message that I think resonates even more when we look at the state of our world today.
Don't you think? If Jacob and Esau, with all their baggage, can find a way to stand together?
It makes you wonder what could be possible if we all embraced, forgiveness and compassion.
Absolutely.
A willingness to bridge those divides. It's definitely something to think about.
It is.
But this chapter, it's not done with its twists and turns yet.
What do you mean?
Remember how we were just talking about the emotional roller coaster of Rachel's death?
And the birth of Benjamin.
Yeah. Well, the text throws us another curveball right after that image of unity between Jacob and Esau.
Really? What happens?
We find out that Reuben, Jacob's oldest son,
Yeah.
he commits a pretty shocking act.
What does he do?
He sleeps with Bilhah,
Yeah.
one of Jacob's wives, who was also, by the way, Rachel's maidservant.
Oh, wow. Talk about a scandal.
I know, right? It feels like such a betrayal on so many levels. But this is Genesis we're talking about, so there's got to be more to it than that.
You're right. There always is. What does the source say?
Well, it would be easy to get caught up in the scandal of it all, but, this isn't a soap opera.
Right.
MCS Genesis chapter 35 suggests that Reuben's actions actually represent the presence of sin.
Sin, even within this chosen lineage.
Exactly. Remember that big vision of Israel bringing life to the world?
I do.
Well, here we see the other side of that. The reality that even those chosen by God, they're capable of messing up.
So it's about that tension.
Between our human flaws and our divine calling.
Yes. It's not enough to just be part of something bigger than ourselves. Our choices still matter.
Our choices have consequences.
That's a powerful message.
And it's a message that's echoed later in the chapter, actually, when Jacob is blessing his sons.
What happens?
He specifically addresses what Reuben did.
It does.
And he strips him of his birthright because of it.
Wow.
It's a harsh reminder that our choices, they echo. And they impact not just us, but everyone who comes after. It's incredible, isn't it? This chapter, it throws everything at us. Hope, heartbreak, reconciliation, even betrayal.
It really does, like you said earlier, a microcosm of life.
Yeah, with all its messy complexities. But even with that reminder about sin, about the consequences of our actions, the chapter doesn't end on a down note, does it?
You're right. There's this sense of moving forward, even with the weight of what's happened. And our source points out that the chapter ends with a genealogy.
A genealogy?
Yeah, a listing of Jacob's 12 sons.
Oh, right. It did seem like a bit of a dry detail after all that drama, but...
Yeah. But remember, those aren't just names on a page.
Right. These are the 12 sons who become the fathers of the 12 tribes of Israel.
Exactly.
So it's bringing us back to that bigger picture again, that promise of a nation descended from Abraham.
And it's like, even when individuals make mistakes, even with the sin, the heartbreak, God's plan, it keeps unfolding.
It does, doesn't it?
That's a message that I think speaks to all of us, don't you think?
In what way?
Well, we all mess up. We all have times where we stray from the path, but this chapter, it's a good reminder that God's grace, it's bigger than our failings.
He can take our messiest moments and use them for something more.
He can weave them into something bigger, a story of redemption, of hope.
It's like that saying where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. Wow. This chapter, it's really taken us on a journey.
It has. We've seen loss, reconciliation, and we've grappled with some pretty complex ideas.
Family, legacy, it's left me with a lot to think about.
Me too. And that's the beauty of diving into these texts, isn't it? It's not about finding all the answers. It's about asking the hard questions.
Wrestling with those difficult emotions, allowing ourselves to be changed by these stories.
That's it, exactly.
And this story, this chapter in Genesis, it's anything but simple. It's got joy, sorrow, betrayal, forgiveness. It's a story that reminds us we're part of something so much bigger than ourselves, something that started long before us and will continue long after we're gone.
And within that story, our own stories matter.
Our choices matter. The legacy we leave behind, it matters.
This chapter, it's like a mirror, in a way.
Of a mirror.
Yeah. If Genesis 35 is a glimpse into life, what kind of story does it inspire you to write with yours?
That's a powerful thought to leave with everyone today. And on that note, we're at the end of our deep dive into Genesis chapter 35. We hope this exploration has given you some fresh perspectives and maybe even sparked your curiosity to delve a little deeper into this incredible text. Until next time, keep exploring, keep those questions coming, and keep seeking truth.